Guys, Eric here, you're a senior instructor on the cybersecurity analyst course, and I'm hopping on a call with Matt Parkhill, who's going to be joining us now as an associate instructor for the cybersecurity course as well. So what I wanted to do today, or what Matt and I wanted to do today, is essentially hop on and Matt's going to introduce himself, and then we're going to have a discussion about Matt's current role as a cybersecurity professional and his background, and a bunch of other questions that I've seen a lot of people ask across the course about working cyber professionals today. So I think the first thing I'm going to ask you, Matt, is to introduce yourself, mate. What's your background? How long have you been working in cyber for?
Yep. So obviously, Matthew, I came from Army, 9 years within the Army. Over 2/3 of that were in special operations as a combat engineer. I deployed to Afghanistan, Iraq. Quickly realized by the end of all the running at 100 miles an hour that I needed to do something that was a bit slower for myself and a bit more, I guess, time friendly for my family. So I made the transition to get out and try to get into cybersecurity through the help of with me back in 2018, I think. Currently, I'm a security analyst within a security operations center at Macquarie Telecom in the government business unit. I've been doing that for about 10 months now, a little bit over. Prior to that, I had a 6-month stint in recruitment as a cybersecurity recruiter, which was great for the time while I was doing it, but it kind of just fueled the fire. I was putting other people into jobs that I really felt I could do or wanted to do. So I made the jump, managed to land myself a role as a security analyst, and yeah, I'm absolutely loving it.
That's awesome to hear, man. I think that's a very similar path to what we get from a lot of people coming out of defense, either in Australia or in the States. And I'd be not wrong in assuming that your role as a combat engineer wasn't very technical in terms of your skills now in cyber.
Definitely not. It's almost from one end of the spectrum to the other in terms of, IT related, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what Matt is a great example of here is what we get a lot of people at the end of the program through is people that have come in with not a high level of technical background and will come out with the absolute potential to dive into that and teach themselves some more. Yeah. So I think what we'll go into now is maybe talk a little bit more about your role in industry. So you talked about what you're doing with Macquarie Telecom as a security analyst, but what responsibilities does your current role carry? And I think, what's your typical day-to-day like? That's something we get asked a lot.
Yep. So, I mean, for my current responsibilities, we monitor a very large portion of the Australian government and their IT infrastructure. In terms of my day-to-day to go with that, like I will come in, we generally will, first thing I will do is have a look for any customer emails or requests or tickets that have been raised overnight. And we will action those, or I will action those those that have landed in my inbox. From there, I'll either, start an investigation or start fulfilling the request, or I'll reach out to the customer to request more information, because sometimes these customers, and the people that are raising these tickets don't fully understand what they need or what they're trying to achieve. And so they put something in an email or a ticket, and then you need to kind of go back to that customer and articulate, what is it you're really looking for? Because I'm looking here, but if you give me what I really need, I could just be looking in this little bit. And then you've pretty much saved yourself, hours or days of work by just having a 2-minute call with the customer and go, okay, you're not actually looking for this. It's more so this. But in terms of anything else throughout the day, we I guess, do a lot of investigation, a lot of log analysis work. We utilize Splunk very heavily on that. We pretty much ingest everything into Splunk, so we're able to view, all our proxy, our firewall, our email, IPS data, and narrow down quite quickly what it is the customer's looking for. Or if we see, an advisory come in, noting of some suspicious IP addresses, we can jump into Splunk and have a look straight away to see if those IP addresses have been hit anywhere in the logs that have been ingested. For me, I guess my day is primarily split between customer. And then it's when I have time, it's a lot of upskilling for me. It's, looking at some of the like sites like Beliefing Computer, for example, and other, good security resources to look at, other ISCs or indications of compromise, and potentially doing a search within our own system to see all those logs to see if that's something there that no one's noticed yet, and that we can pick it up before it has any negative impact or effect. That's pretty much my day to day. There is a lot of internal meetings and knowledge sharing sessions where we have people come in that just excel in one space and they share that knowledge. And I think that's pretty critical within security to be open to listen to someone's, their skill set and their knowledge on it, but also be prepared to give back and, share your side of things as well.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds awesome. So there's a couple of things I want to unpack there. And in terms of questions that we get a lot from students, I think the day-to-day one is a very common one. And what I think you can take away from Matt's experience here is that it's not a very structured step-by-step process. And I think the role of a cyber analyst in general is always going to be very investigative. And it's going to be very people-driven in the sense that you're always trying to figure out issues that people are having, whether that be answering tickets or what's going to be the issue between the process and the people and the tech. It's something that it's a concept that I like to kind of state over and over again, is that cybersecurity investigation is always going to be figuring out the relationship between people, processes, and tech. And I think there's more doing that and trying to figure out what's going on than sitting down and checking off your boxes for the day.
Yep, I completely agree.
Thing I want to look at too is that you brought up something I like to talk about all the time, is how cybersecurity is such a dynamic field that you are having to keep up to date. And you mentioned a lot about expanding your own knowledge. You got any little tips for what resources you often go to for your cyber news or wider intel?
Yep. So in terms of Australian threats, there's the ACSC, which offer great resources, and they're pretty up to date, pretty on the mark with what they see and what they report on. They offer all different levels of, openness or availability to who is impacted or if customers are impacted. Across Australia wide, not just where we are. Beliefing Computer is another one that we do utilize a lot of. FireEye is another great resource point, especially, FireEye is one of those ones that I think are probably one of the industry leaders when it comes to cybersecurity. Utilizing what they see, their threat reports is definitely another key piece. I think it's also probably just the vendors, the products that we use, looking for what they see. They're normally pretty quick to put patches and updates out to mitigate these vulnerabilities. But sometimes they can lag, and you could be first to see it on their website or something that they posted. Another one I use only of recently is Twitter. Twitter's got some great content for keeping up to date with what's going on in the world. Who was compromised last night, hundreds of millions of accounts from somewhere. That hasn't hit the news yet, but it's on Twitter within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Something like that's brilliant.
Something I definitely recommend a lot of kind of aspiring professionals as well is don't underestimate the power of social media. We always use it in our personal lives, but I think being able to utilize especially really fast moving platforms like Twitter to stay on top of what's going on across the world is something that's often overlooked. I think is a real interesting vector for gaining knowledge. So I guess jumping to the next question here, what do you think is the best thing about working in cyber in Australia?
That's a good question. I think for me personally, I think it's the ability to think outside the box, and sometimes the most logical path isn't the best way to do things. Like, the easiest route isn't always the solution. And sometimes it takes that individual that different mindset, that different process of thinking to solve a problem, or to get to a solution that no one else may have been able to arrive to. In saying that, it's also good to have, what I enjoy especially is that think outside the box approach to risks that may be associated with actually, implementing a block on an IP address, or blocking a certain URL, or blocking, putting a blacklist in for some email senders, but some of those email senders are legitimate traffic, so we can't block everything. So you've got to think, what's the actual impact of me? I can fix a problem right now, but will that create more problems down the road? Should I consult with my team, or should I think about what else could be impacted, or what's a better way to solve this problem? I think the other thing for me within security is as large as it is, it's quite a small community, and there's a lot of knowledge sharing. Like we talked about, the social medias, there's all those free resources that are out there. I think, if you've got a problem, there's more than enough people that are happy and willing to solve it or help you through it. It obviously depends whether it's in your, I guess, role to engage those people, but you can reach out to the wider community. And there's a lot of knowledge to be shared out there. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that really attracted me to it, was just how open a lot of people are to wanting to help others in security, because it's a problem that affects everyone. So it's definitely good to see that, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think the tightness of the community and the openness is something that I've experienced as well, and found very useful. And I think one other thing I like to talk about, and this isn't to say anything bad about or say that there's less opportunities in the States, because there definitely isn't. It's just that Matt and I are both from Australia, so we're more familiar with the landscape here than in the States. But I think being able to be boots on the ground in a really developing cyber power, when you think about Australia, is someone that's very regionally distinct from other Five Eyes communities, if you think about that. And also really in a developmental stage for cybersecurity and coming into its own. I find that very interesting as well. Especially with a lot of the, a thing I like to point out a lot is that if you look at developing countries in East Asia or Southeast Asia, or even all the way going to India and the subcontinent, it's a lot of places that are only now starting to have really widespread and democratized access to high-speed internet, which is a lot of the world essentially coming online. And that's going to have a lot of implications for cybersecurity in the future. And I think Australia is postured in a really interesting place regionally to be involved in that.
I definitely agree. And look, having, the US pretty much leading the way and very close ally to the US, look, I've worked very closely with them in, multiple times in my career as well. They are definitely leading the way, but they're happy to share the knowledge and pass it down. And those big, industry, or those big companies like Splunk, FireEye, CrowdStrike, Exabeam coming through, like these companies that started in the US have made their way to Australia, and they just share the love. And it's no change, nothing's really done differently here in Australia than in the US. And we're pretty quick to adapt and to a change. And we're pretty open to listen to, I think, recommendations from, US and other leading countries when it comes to security.
Definitely. Apologies there. Didn't take your advice of turning my phone off, so good on me. All right, let's hop into the next part, a bit on the other end of the spectrum. What do you think is the biggest challenge about working in cyber?
I think for me, I think from what I see across the board, to be honest, is it can be quite demanding, especially when you're dealing with time-sensitive issues. You're dealing with aggravated or angry customers that, why did this happen? Give me an answer. And it's like, you've got to step back and go, okay, I don't have the answer. I need time to solve this problem. But it's that constant, you feel like that pressure's on you, and I've got to make a decision now. But that's where I think, to flip the script a little bit, that military background can definitely help, where it's, decision-making when you're in a time-sensitive situation. There's a lot of stress on your shoulders. You're kind of able to compose yourself and, not get flustered and not overthink something, and just go, that's what I need to do first. And you attack that. Now, obviously, if that doesn't work, you pretty quick to reassess and pivot to the next best solution. But it can definitely feel a little bit overwhelming. And for me, I have felt outside of my comfort zone a few times, felt, things that I didn't know, having conversations to people. And it's kind of like just being open and honest and going, I don't know that, but I can go away and find out. That can happen a lot. Or I think the other challenge to go with that is you try to articulate, some information, and either someone you're consulting with or a customer doesn't understand it, and you need to put it not into a layman's terms, but you need to, tone it down a bit or dumb it down a bit so that they can understand. And it kind of can get frustrating when, you just want to deliver a simple message, but it's just not being received the right way. That's one of probably not the downside, but probably one of the challenges. The other challenge that I see across the board is there's a lot of potential burnout. Like, people don't really switch off because we're so connected so easily. And, within security, IT in general, you've got your phone, you've got your laptop with you. If something happens, most ex-army or ex-military, any force, would probably just open that laptop and start working. And then suddenly 4 hours later, you finished 5 hours ago and you're like, whoa, I've had like a 12-hour day. And that can happen for days on end unless you kind of just make that decision and draw a line in the sand and say, I'm not going to do that. I need to stop. But that's not always the case. And that's not always, you don't always get the chance to do that. I think that's probably two of the biggest things that I see. The biggest challenge of them all is probably that the adversary, these APTs, these people, if they want to get in, they're going to get in. No matter how persistent we are, they've probably got bigger funding, bigger budgets, more persistence, better resource, probably more people, depending on the size of your team. And they're constantly outthinking you. No matter how good you think you are, they're guaranteed to be someone that knows it better and knows another way in that you haven't thought about. And that's what security is all about. It's like a game of chess almost. They play a move, you slow them down, but they've already got their next move lined up. They were hoping you'd make that move. It's just a constant challenge. But that can also be a positive thing where no 2 days are the same and you are challenging yourself. How do we mitigate that threat? Well, I could just turn the power off, to be honest, but that's not going to happen. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like the chess analogy there because it is like playing chess, but you've got to convince your executive to let you buy pieces, and the
exactly
adversary
right.
has more pieces, and you don't know what pieces they have. So
exactly right.
Back foot.
And you look at like in the CSA course, like the Lazarus group, they're heavily funded. They fund themselves almost for what they're able to attain and achieve. And obviously they're backed by nation state, but how do you, as a small team or an individual, you can't outclass that. You can't outthink that, but you can try. And you may find something that no one else has seen, and it can help slow them down across the board. And that goes back to that knowledge sharing piece. But that's a challenge. I like a challenge. That's what interested me, is I really want to beat them. Now, I know I probably personally, as an individual, never will, but who knows? You know what I mean? You can do your best to think about it. And I think that's one of the things I do, flipping it again, as much as that's a challenge, that's what excites me, I think.
Definitely. And I think you'll find a lot of people that are interested in cybersecurity are very challenged and very goal-oriented. And so even then you can hear us just talking about it now, what we think are the biggest challenges, which is almost another way of putting it as what are the worst parts of working in cybersecurity. There's some of the parts that drive us,
You're exactly right.
It's a very awesome part. So I think the last question I want to ask you here, Matt, is what advice would you give to aspiring cyber professionals? And we touched on it before, but including those with a non-technical background.
Yep. So I went about this the very wrong way when I transitioned and started my journey into security, and that's getting overwhelmed with looking at, there's so much to learn, I don't have enough time, or there's so many things I need to know, there's no way I can possibly remember all this. I quite quickly met with a lot of people and recommended this and try that and do this. And it was just like, I start this and I start that and I never finished anything. And then I had to take a step back and just attack one thing until I completed it. And then I was like, okay, I'm confident enough in my skill set to do that. Now I'm going to go do this, whether it's, utilizing a bit of software or a tool, say Splunk, for example, or understanding networking, which I'm still not the greatest networker by any means, but I do understand enough to get me by for my day-to-day. But that's definitely something that I would recommend is don't take too much on. If you're already out and you've got the time, then you can open up your mind to a bit more ingestion, I guess. But if you're still serving, you've got your day-to-day, and then you've got to go home and start learning what you want to do for the future. And that's, if you take on too much, you won't learn a lot at all. You'll learn very little, I think. I think the other thing that helped immensely for my journey was networking. I was at very early, like all the With You With Me meetups and the conferences. I was at the ASA, which is Australian Information Security Association, all their meetups and their conferences. There's a lot of meetup groups on cybersecurity. I was at them. I was just trying to network. It helped that when I was recruiting, that I was also meeting these contacts, potential candidates, potential clients, but I was learning. I was always taking something home. I'd learn a little bit about something and I'd go home and I'd research it more. Oh, I didn't know that existed. Oh, there's free training on that. Okay, let's do that. That's something I can take on, when I've got the time to do so. But networking, I think that can bypass a lot of roadblocks. That can build some great connections. Networking is what actually got me my job at the moment, purely for just wanting to help other people. Someone saw that and wanted to take, took the risk there. But yeah, networking's right up there with not taking too much on. I think the other thing is understanding that you're not going to know it all and you're not going to learn everything. Like I've got guys at work that can write Python scripts in minutes. I can read it. I'll never be able to write it like they can. So I quickly learned that I can't do that. I won't try and learn that because I can better use my time for other things that I can learn. So it's understanding your limits as well, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And if you don't think you can do something, at least try it. And if it is, if you just don't understand it, then pivot to something that's closely related to it, or excel in something else, I guess, is the key message there.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's a really important point too, as well. You're never going to be able to know everything, but nobody's also expecting you to, I think a lot of people will enter the industry thinking that they have to be across everything. And I think what I'd recommend there is rather than try to know anything, find what you like and specialize.
Exactly right.
There's always going to be a need for subject matter experts in certain areas.
That's it. And I think to toe on the back of that is understanding how something works is going to be great, and it's going to save. Just because you can't actually do that doesn't mean you're not going to get the job, or you're not going to get looked at twice for a certain position. But understanding and being able to have a conversation about that, understanding enough to talk about it, is probably the key piece you want to be able to do. You see in job advertisements, able to write C++ or Perl or Bash, or understanding the differences between those is probably where you should start. Not, I need to go and learn all four of those different languages, because each one's going to open up a different threat or a different vulnerability to how someone gets into your network, where it's utilized. I think understanding that side of stuff, but not being the SME of all four of those things, or whatever capacity you want to put it into, I think very critical in the road to success for it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, I think we covered a lot of really good stuff today, Matt. I think just before we kind of close off, are there any other final points you'd like to make?
To be honest, I think perseverance is the biggest thing. Keep at it. I very close came to giving up, but I kind of kicked myself in the ass and said, no, that's where I want to be. The other thing is, I guess for anyone else that's thinking about making that transition or trying to get into security, don't doubt yourself. There's a lot of brilliant things that you can bring to a company. And to be very honest, I rely on my military training nearly every day to how I go about doing things. My processes, my thought processes, questions I ask when everyone's sitting in a meeting and no one's got a question. I'm like, I need to write 2 questions. I need to, ask 2 questions. I need to know something. I think those are probably, some key takeaway points that I would definitely recommend for anyone that's either making the journey, trying to get to the next step in that journey, have, just started or about to start. Just take that first step. That's all you got to do. Once you start, you won't look back. There's so many free resources. There's so many helpful hands out there. And like with me, such a great platform to learn, so much. And I think everyone's invested in each other in it. Even the candidates that come through on these courses want to know more. They want to help others. It's in our nature. Like, just use that and thrive on it, I think is what I'd say take away from it.
That's awesome, man. I think that's really awesome advice. And I think a lot of people will take a lot away from that and will be really relieved to hear someone that was in a very similar situation to them say that as well.
Yep.
I guess just on closing out now, man, you're going to be here around making a lot of content for cyber students. Where can they find this and what's in the pipeline?
Yep. So obviously I'll be uploading this onto Rally Point. I'm also in the forums and, helping where I can, answering questions for people that, might need a little bit of a hand. In terms of content, I guess the next, 5 or 6 weeks will probably be some free resources I've used, some great learning resources that are free, and there are obviously paid versions of them. I'll touch on a bit of Splunk. I do want to go over a bit of Splunk, which is another great free resource. And they do offer some great free training as well. Some downloads, some installs of Kali. We'll do a little bit of Kali work, I think, as well, which is great, and just familiarizing yourself with how all that works, because Linux can be quite scary for someone that's not very IT backgrounded, or for any matter, like, I guess PC, Windows, or Mac. No one really thinks of Linux. Linux is, you need to have that Linux. Just that Unix, Linux understanding, I think, will help you very much. So we'll cover a bit of that. And then just some free resources / websites, I guess, that I use on a day-to-day basis to actually help me find if we've, some malicious IPs, suspicious IPs, dodgy URLs, user agent strings that might be outdated and could be vulnerable. So those are some of the things I think we'll cover off in the next, 5 or 6 weeks and so forth.
That sounds awesome, man. I can't wait to see the content. I'm sure a lot of our students can't wait to see it. It's going to help them a lot. So just thanks very much, everyone. Check Matt out. He'll be on the platform. He'll be in the forums, in the squad forum or the Cyber Defender Pathway squad. And I think that's about it all for today. Thanks for hopping on with me, man.
No worries.
It'll be good to see you around.
Thanks very much, Eric. Have a great one, man. Catch ya.
You too, dude.
Bye.